Neutra was born in Vienna in 1892. He studied architecture at Technical University of Vienna. He also studied informally with Adolf Loos, an Viennese architect known for designing complex interior spaces and for rejecting architectural ornaments. Neutra's studies were interrupted by his service in World War I. After war, he found employment in Berlin with Erich Mendelssohn, the German expressionist architect whose work is characterized by streamlined interpretation of industrial structures. However, opportunities combined this European aesthetics with American innovations in architectural technologies, particularly in steel, led Neutra to United States in 1923. His fellow student in Vienna, R.N. Schindler, who already was in Los Angeles, encouraged Neutra to join him. Lowell Beach House, one of Schindler's commission for Lowell, really his best client and became Neutra's best client. Lowell Health House, created by Neutra in 1929 for Lowell. We will know more about this house through this video ahead.
Richard Neutra created for the 20th century several classic designs in the Los Angeles area. His son, Dion, designed with him many of the houses.
We did not have the budgets to build for eternity. We wish we would, but the design far outlives the mechanical systems or whatever the materials were. The Lovell House we have always called the Health House. The reason is that the original client came to my father with a very interesting proposition. How can we do an architectural statement of what would be healthy for the human being? Of course, the challenging site and the program gave him something that he was able to do that created worldwide attention, and from then on his career was launched in this direction. These buildings are now becoming enveloped in nature. People say, well, where's the architecture? Turns out that the architecture is really the view from inside.
Neutra's Lovell House is across the canyon from the Wright House. Today, Betty Topper and her family live in it.
The other homes that I've lived in have been wood and not as much glass. This is steel, glass, and concrete. But it's a very warm feeling in spite of the fact. And actually, it's more open than any of the other homes that I've lived in. It took me a while, I think, to really appreciate it, because it was different. You look out the window and you walk out the door, and nature it's always there. It's never hidden. This is just our home. That's the way we use it, and that's the way we like it.
By the end of 1930s, Neutra's work exhibited in new direction, emphasizing indoor-outdoor living. The new houses were largely single-story to better connect them with the outdoors. Typically, they had large expanses of glasses shaded by deep overhangs with flat roofs. Between the completion of Garden House in BDL-1, 1939, and construction of second BDL Research House in 1966, Neutra's aesthetic evolved from geometric purity of the international style to a further integration of natural material and landscape into his residential works. The Nestbird House reflects this trend with water features and vegetation linking interior and exterior places. Increasingly, Neutra added nature into the house. During the post-war period, the Neutra office typically planned residences around the outdoor places. The arid desert climate of the Palm Springs permeates the Kaufman Desert House. We will further see more in the footage ahead the design of the Kaufman Desert House. With his numerous published designs and extensive writing, Neutra's fame continued to grow. His designed houses still remain an object of desire for many celebrities in Hollywood. In 1949, Time magazine named him Man of the Year, calling him one of the best and influential ones of the time.
That's me, with my family and my grandparents, spending a day in the park, sometime in the first week of April, 1970. Almost a week later, my grandfather, the architect Richard Neutra, would be arguing with a client and drop dead from a massive heart attack. I only have a few recollections of my grandfather. I wanted to understand this man, so in the first months of the year 2000, I went out to LA, where he used to live, and interviewed on camera some of the people who did know him. By listening to their memories, I was hoping to get a better understanding of who he was, and maybe learn something about myself.
Mr. Neutra, we would like to have you design a house for us. What's your budget? Well, I hadn't thought about a budget.
He's a very imposing man to look at. If I didn't know him, I would be frightened. I'm easily intimidated by that. Just natural, simple, direct, just nothing in between. I mean, he was an extraordinary being.
Your grandfather would come totally unannounced. Why? Because he owned the house. After all, it was his house. He allowed us to live in it and to pay for it. It was very kind of him. But he would appear on the scene.
One time, they dropped by about 10 o'clock at night, and he wasn't shaved, which is unusual. And Mrs. Neutra said he had felt depressed, and they came and sat here for about 10 minutes, and he didn't say anything. Maybe just to see the view, I don't know.
And she wanted a mirror where she could stand and look at the length of her hand. And he says, absolutely not. You will put a hole in that wall if you do that. And he says, I will not allow you to put a hole in my wall.
A lot of my feeling toward him was one of kind of worrying about him. Everyone in the family was always sort of scurrying around trying to support him.
You know, it's not good parenting. And so in that sense, it's abusive. It was absolutely not intentional. It was not something he was doing out of bad will or anything, not at all.
He was a very needy person. He just couldn't have enough people interested in what he was doing.
Oh yeah, well, he certainly had the ability to charm. There's no doubt about it. He was just a natural salesman.
Just watching a master at work. And he had this animated and engaging way of talking to people. He looked very impressive with his white hair flowing and so forth.
He's getting ready to give a lecture or do something, make a public appearance, and he would say, I can't do this, I just know I can't do it, and he would be very scared, you know, very down.
My father said, well, all right, so are you going to straighten up or are we going to send you to this school? And I said, well, I want to go to this school. And then he broke into tears.
He had a mission and he wanted to accomplish certain things. And at the same time, he was plagued by these self-doubts.
Neutra and I did achieve a wonderful rapport. It took a lifetime practically. But at least he admitted this in one of his writings. Nonetheless, he was such a cold, impersonal person. I used to say this, with Soriano, with Schindler, all the other architects, we became good friends. All of a sudden, as I was focusing the camera, I saw something in front of my camera. I took my focusing cloth off, and it was Richard Neutra standing there with a little twig. I said, Richard, you're an intelligent man. You expect me to get little twigs in front of my lens to hide a strip of concrete 6 feet high?
Well, he says, actually, I could use somebody, and my son Raymond is just about to go to McGill University, so there's a room downstairs available, and you could eat with us, and you don't have to pay me and I don't pay you. I thought about this for about 2 seconds. I thought, this is a wonderful chance. This is a great opportunity, and I jumped at it.
And I think what happened to me personally was that working for Neutra and being around that and feeling that the almost desperate commitment to the art sort of sunk in.
And actually stayed 3 years, and he actually, after about 6 months or so, he did start paying. And there was a squawk box everywhere. When you're in the bathroom, you're going to hear RGN's voice saying, "Paul, I'd like a sketch of this in the morning." You know, it's about midnight now. And so time really meant very little to him.
And it was probably about midnight, and Richard and Dione had just come back from the theater. And Richard came through the front door first, and it was like a bullet. He was back looking at the drawings, and seeing what's happening, what's going on. He was pleased that somebody was working away on his project. There was the other side, I sort of felt sorry for her, walking up alone and after a nice evening.
I soon realized that to get some kind of a life, you need to get out of that house.
My grandfather was a complicated man. He had a certain power that still influences us to this day.
That for me, it is a privilege to live in this space, which is always new. This architecture, in my view, will be modern 50 years from now.
Meeting Richard Neutra was extremely fateful because my whole life pattern began on that day.
An extremely generous, very sweet man. When he was performing, he wasn't. He was all elbows. But the emphasis has been more on the elbows in the past, and how clever he was, and how he could outsmart, and he can actually manipulate the media and get on Time magazine, all those kinds of things. How did he do that?
Such was the man behind the works. His book, Survival Through Designs, introduced aspects of human physiology and psychological well-being to architectural designs.